What's up, guys? My name is David.
And I'm Manny.
And today we're going to talk about one of the weirdest but most popular gecko pets in the trade.
The leopard gecko.
So leopard geckos actually originate from the Middle East, and they're some of the coolest and most popular pets in the lizard industry. You know, these guys are they've been around for a long time, about 30 years in the pet trade, and they're just so simple to take care of. They're so beautiful and very docile, as you can see. This guy's just kind of wanting to explore, but he's not really freaking out, and I rarely handle him. They're just very tame by nature and very curious as well.
And as you can tell from Goku here, leopard geckos aren't very big animals. So you can easily house them in a 10 to 15 gallon enclosure. Now, another cool thing about them is these guys are insectivores, so you're going to want to feed generally a variety of insects, but you could also maintain them off mealworms. There's been people who's been breeding them for long periods of time and fed only mealworms, and that's been pretty successful. You can do mealworms, waxworms, phoenix worms, crickets, roaches. Variety is always good, but these guys can be just fine just off of mealworms. So what you're going to want to do is leave like one water bowl, one bowl of mealworms, and then a bowl with a little bit of calcium. These guys do sometimes need extra calcium in their body, so oftentimes they can actually go up to the calcium and eat it just like that. And you also need to mist them once a week. Half of the enclosure you'd like to mist, so if they want to kind of dry off, they could just move to the other side of the enclosure. And also, they get their drinking water from when you spray the sides of the tanks and things like that.
Yeah, so very simple, like Manny said. This is actually a giant leopard gecko, so the normal leopard geckos are a little smaller than this, and very simple. You keep them in like a 10 or 15 gallon enclosure. You don't want to give them a lot of branches, and they're not arboreal geckos like some of the other animals we work with. They're terrestrial, so they'll spend their whole life, in the desert, or they're just exploring down there. They're not really comfortable going up high, and they're just scavenging for food all the time. But yeah, guys, 10-15 gallon tank. You want to make sure you give these guys a good source of heat, because they are, they're nocturnal, but they require some heat. They will digest their food. The heat from the belly is probably the best. That's what most people use, like the under tank heaters. You could also provide like a heat lamp, but like we said, they're nocturnal, so the pad is probably the best. The heating area, we'll call it the warm spot, that's going to be around 90, like 90 to 95 degrees. And then the ambient temperature, or the cooler side of the enclosure, should be around like 78 to 80 degrees. That's generally how you want to keep these guys, and they will thrive. So the substrate for these guys is actually very simple. I like to use like paper towels, or some sort of like packing paper, the brown packing paper, or even newspaper. Those are all great substrates for these guys. As far as the sand, you could also use sand. I know it makes the enclosure a lot nicer looking, but I've heard of impaction problems in the past. So if you don't have to use sand, I wouldn't use it. It makes it a lot easier to just crumble up some paper, throw it out, and put new paper in.
Another really cool thing about the leopard geckos is the variety that they come in. There's a huge amount of different colors, morphs, similar to the ball pythons. I actually consider these guys like the ball pythons of the lizard world, because they're easy to care, easy to breed, and the bunch of different morphs that there are of them.
Yeah, and as you guys could see, when we started the video, we said these were some of the weirdest lizards, and that's because of that fat tail you see right there. So the reason for this fat tail is because in the desert, food isn't you don't find food very often. It's very scarce. So these guys will eat as much as they can, and any extra fat they will store in this tail, and if they need it later on, if they spend a lot of days without eating or drinking, they'll just take it from the tail, and the tail will start to get skinnier. So it's a pretty cool, mechanism for nature to, to thrive in the wild. and it definitely makes these guys unique because there's not too many animals that do things like that. Another interesting fact about these guys is that they can drop their tail if they feel threatened. A lot of the gecko species, you know, they will drop their tail if there's a predator that's after it. The tail wiggles around, and usually the predator goes for the tail and the gecko gets away. They will also make some really funny, you know, like squeaks, especially the babies when they're startled, when they think that you're gonna eat them. They'll just squeak at you, scream at you, and puff up, think they're all tough. But in reality, guys, these are really harmless animals. They're not venomous or anything like that. Super easy to keep, and they make really, really great pets.
And they do regrow their tail.
Right.
You know, that's one of the things that a lot of people don't really like about the crested geckos is that they drop their tail and that's it. Well, these guys do happen to regrow their tail, so that's very helpful.
Yeah. Their tail doesn't regrow as nice as it is when they're original, but they do regrow it, and they'll use it again as a fat storage.
If you guys enjoyed this video and you want to keep up to date with the progress of Goku and many of the other animals that we have here, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, Facebook, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel, you know, so to be up to date to every time we make a video. You know, we're putting out a video at the end of each month, and we're also starting to do now YouTube Live.
Yeah, guys, I mean, I appreciate all of you guys. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions about Goku or any leopard geckos, oh, he's freaking out a little bit, feel free to hit us up and we'd be more than happy to help.
Until next time, you've been watching TikisGeckos.